Today we're taking a close-up look at the Nike Air Force 1 Paint Splatter. One of my good viewers out there was kind enough to tell me about this shoe when I did this guy right here. This is the Blazer Splatter, which is coming out roughly around about the same time, but these guys came first out to us and we saw them, we saw their official images and all that kind of stuff a little bit before we saw the Air Force 1s. But to be honest, sorry Blazer heads out there, but I think the Air Force 1s just take it, especially because of one specific hit on the shoe, but there's a lot more in it as well. Back in that Blazer video I was a bit confused and not doing a great job about pointing out the symmetry between the two shoes, and I was able to find that much more ably on this video, and I'll show you that symmetry, how the left and the right shoes reflect each other in two places, not just one, and it's clear as day. So that whole random sort of splatter effect that they're talking about isn't actually true, because otherwise how could they possibly be symmetrical? And we'll get into that, we'll get into the details, the hits, the material, all of it that goes together to make up the upcoming release of the Nike Air Force 1 Paint Splatter. This is a Tokyo Bada 23 sneaker channel. Tokyo Bada 23 sneaker channel des. Meine Jobs no day, meine team to design every single day. From Tokyo, Japan, I bring you content about upcoming sneaker releases, sneaker news, and sneaker reviews. And today in the spotlight is an Air Force 1. It's a cracking Air Force 1. It's a sweet looking shoe with a couple of little sort of hidden bits in there that you have to really dig deep to find, because I was surprised to get into those. And like I said already, we had the Blazers, and there are a lot of commonalities between the Blazer Splatters and the Air Force 1 Paint Splatters, but there are some significant differences too. Staying on the Blazers just for a quick second, the style of splatter is very similar between the two shoes. The hit of on the swoosh and the colouring on the swoosh is very similar between the two shoes, and there is a position with the branding, and it's on the heel of the Blazers. It's that kind of branding that's also on the Air Force 1s, but it's actually in a different spot. So now that we know what that Blazer looks like, we'll get into this today and have a look at these Air Force 1s and see what's going on with these shoes and take them apart a little bit, and hopefully you guys out there will take a look and think, you know what, that's a very cool shoe. I think I might just go ahead and grab a pair. So let's get into it and talk about it. Now, I think I've got two really main things I want to go for. I want to go for the symmetry, and I also want to go for that main difference between the Blazers and the Air Force 1s. I don't know which one will I go for first. Let's go for the main difference, and then we'll get to the symmetry side of things. So the main difference comes on the midsole. So hopefully I'm able to show you this on the midsole here. And what we're talking about is a very fine splatter that runs the length of the midsole in all those colors, but it's very, very small and very, very detailed. Interspersed throughout that, there are some of those bigger splatters that are significant and easily seen on the upper, but it's that midsole that we're looking at first to see the major distinction between the Blazers and the Air Force 1s in the splatter department, because the Blazers had a very simple midsole, whereas these guys, it's like some kind of spray offshoot. It's not really a splatter, it's more like a spray, kind of extra bit of spray that's going around something and giving you that effect on the midsoles, whereas the rest of it is all about the splatter. And since we're looking at those major differences between the Blazers and the Air Force 1s, before I get to that symmetrical thing, we might as well look at the other major difference. I already showed you the heel on the Blazers with that kind of stitched effect, Nike branding at the top there, and it's effect. I don't think it's actually embroidered, I think it's effect. And the Air Force 1s have standard branding on the back, which we'll get to later, but we want to get to that stitch effect branding which you see up on the tongues on the Air Force 1. So it's the same kind of branding, it's just in a different position on the shoe, and that's kind of significant as well. So those two are probably the biggest features. There's other small things that we'll get to throughout the video, but they're the main ones to take home with you today. That the midsole is a sort of spray effect, which is different from the Blazers, and then on the tongue is where you see that special piece of branding as opposed to on the heel. So parking that's the first thing, was the major differences between the two shoes. Then we've got this symmetrical thing that I'm talking about, and then finally the different hits on the shoes. So what I was able to do was really look carefully, because I didn't look carefully enough in the Blazer video, and find two really great spots to give you that symmetrical feel. So what we'll do first is we'll have a look at the toe box, and then we'll have a look at the heel in a minute. So we're on the toe of the shoe, and I really need to point out for you guys what I mean by symmetrical, because there's two possibilities that we're talking about. So first and foremost, we're zoomed in on one of the toe boxes, not both of them, and what I'm not talking about is if you split the shoe itself down the middle and look at the lateral side and the medial side of the shoe, you can see they're clearly different. There is not a symmetrical side between the left and the right, or the lateral and the medial sides of each shoe. But then if we zoom out from that and see the two shoes side by side, imagine if you draw the line right between the shoes and then look at the left shoe and the right shoe. So it's not the left side and the right side, or the lateral side and the medial side of the shoes. It's the left shoe compared to the right shoe. And we're in there on the toes, and clearly you can see that in two particular places. One is that kind of splattery black. It's a large piece of black splatter paint on the toes there, and you can clearly see they're identical on the left and the right shoes. They're just in the opposite sort of side, lateral side on both, and flipped. It's almost there's like flip horizontally or something like that you can do with computers, and it's a bit like these have been flipped horizontally, and then directly above that little black splatter you've got a little blue splatter that's even smaller, but again the shape and the position is exactly the same on the left and the right shoe. So that's where the symmetry effect comes in. It comes in between the two shoes, but not down the middle of one shoe in the medial and the lateral side. So the two shoes are very, very symmetrical in that splatter. It's kind of important because they're selling it as random splatter, but it can't be if it's symmetrical. It must have been placed specifically, probably by a computer. And that's also visible on the heels, so you might as well flip over and have a look at the heels. And the main kind of detailing on there is the two blue lateral medial side splatters on there, and you can see in the position of those and the little dots above them that there's symmetry between the left and the right shoes, but not symmetry within the shoe, the medial and the lateral side. So they're the two really clearest places. And if we go back and have a look at the toe on these guys and go up a little bit from that, you can see the laces. Now I do not know if the laces have symmetrical splatter. It might just be it's the way they're laced that you can't see the symmetrical splatter, or it might be that they are totally random laces and there's no symmetry between the two. I don't know for sure, but you can see in the way these guys are laced that there isn't that symmetry between the two shoes. And then pulling back out from that, something that kind of surprised me. I was expecting these to be white or sail or something like that, and it was when I first was looking close up at them, and this is us moving now into the third part of the video when it's more about the construction and the design of the Air Force Ones, that their base is actually a very, very light grey. I was expecting it to be sail or cream or even white. I didn't expect them to be grey. So it's very light though. I don't know how clearly you'll be able to see the green screen behind me here, but a very light grey upper on these guys. And I did find a pretty nice angled shot to give you a look at the materials on the toe and also the quarter line, to give you an idea of the quality of the materials that are going into these Air Force Ones, which are always made from some of the nicest materials out there. And then to go back from that, it's not too hard to get to that swoosh, which we already talked about, I think, and said that it was the same as the swoosh that you get on the Blazers, and a deep charcoal grey, but still with the splatter throughout it. And then if we wrap that around and go to the heel, you can see the branding now that I was talking about before, that on the Blazers this was that stitched effect, but on these guys it's light blue embroidered branding on the dark charcoal branding panel. And then speaking of branding, we might as well drop down from that onto the midsole. We always talk about this when we get to Air Force Ones, is that they have that air and the line branding that runs through the heel section of the midsole, and it's a question of whether or not that is complementing the color of the midsole or contrasting. It's something different from the color of the midsole, and in today's shoe it's very much complementing it. It's the same color as the midsole, and it even has the same splatter running through it. But I kind of don't mind that. There's enough going on this shoe that we don't need anything extra to add to it, so we're happy with the way the shoe looks. And speaking of which, flipping them upside down, the last place to go is to have a look at that outsole. Now I think I put creamy for this outsole. It must be sail or something like that, but it just seems like a very creamy kind of rich feel to the outsole to finish off what is a cracking looking pair of shoes. So back out, having a look at these guys again. Hopefully all that detail, and now that you're looking at the full shoes, all that explanation of where the branding is placed and the colors are and the symmetry comes in on these guys. Even that base color of light grey on the upper, which is maybe not so noticeable unless you look very, very closely. Hopefully all of that has tied itself together into one neat little video for you guys, and you're able to take away from this a really clear understanding of what's coming down the line for these upcoming releases of the Nike Air Force One paint splatters. And that's where we're going to finish it today and leave this video. Hopefully you guys appreciate that. Hopefully there's enough information in there for you, stuff that you maybe didn't already know about, maybe stuff you did already know about. Surely something you can drop a comment about down below. So hit me up with a comment. I really do a terrible job of replying to comments, and it actually bugs me. I would go so far as to say I feel guilty about it. And I do want to do a better job, so keep dropping those comments and I'll try and sort out my life in such a way that I can actually reply to them at some point. So, but for now, it's time for me just to wrap this video up, sign off, and just do the same thing that I do at the end of every video, every single day, like 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year, heading up towards 900th consecutive day on YouTube. And that is that I tell you that I do this every single day. And that means that you are guaranteed to see me tomorrow.